The commercial flight from Denver to Seattle was boarding when a man in a worn gray jacket entered business class carrying his sobbing 4-year-old daughter. A woman in an immaculate navy suit looked up from her laptop, muttering loudly enough for others to hear. How does someone like that even afford business class? The child's cries intensified as the plane prepared for takeoff. Then the captain's voice burst through the intercom, raw with panic. "This is an emergency. We need a fighter pilot on board immediately." Jack Morgan, 38, carried himself with the quiet dignity of someone who had seen both glory and loss. His gray jacket hung loose on his still athletic frame. In his arms, Lily Morgan gripped her father's collar, her light brown hair plastered to her tear-stained face. Jack's eyes, a steady gray blue that had once tracked enemy aircraft through Syrian skies, now focused entirely on soothing his daughter. His hands, which had once gripped the stick of an F-18 Super Hornet, now gently rubbed Lily's back. Victoria Langford, 42, had built her technology company from a garage startup to a $3 billion enterprise. Her suit cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. Behind her designer glasses, her green eyes held the calculating coolness of someone who had learned early that emotions were luxuries she couldn't afford. She had grown up in Detroit's roughest neighborhood. Every designer label she wore, every first-class ticket she booked, every dismissive glance at those she deemed beneath her success, they were all armor against ever being that powerless girl again. Jack had saved for 6 months to afford these business-class tickets, knowing the extra space would be better for Lily during the 5-hour flight to attend his sister's wedding. As the plane began its taxi, Lily's distress escalated. Jack whispered to her in the voice he reserved for nightmares. "Remember what Daddy told you about the clouds, sweetheart? They're like giant cotton candy castles." Victoria caught the eye of a passing flight attendant. "Excuse me, but is there nothing you can do about this disruption? Some of us have work to complete." She raised her voice just enough to ensure Jack would hear. "Don't they have medications for children on flights? Or better yet, babysitters?" Jack turned slightly, his eyes meeting Victoria's. "I apologize for the disturbance. She lost her mother last year. Flying reminds her of the last trip we took together." The words were simple, factual, devoid of self-pity. Several passengers who had been annoyed suddenly found themselves looking away. Victoria, however, was unmoved. "Perhaps you should have considered that before booking a flight." An elderly woman across the aisle turned to Victoria with a disapproving look. "My dear, you have no idea what that young man has sacrificed. Perhaps a little compassion wouldn't be remiss." Victoria's fingers returned to her keyboard. "I found that compassion is often just another word for enabling." Lily fell into an exhausted sleep. 20 minutes later, she woke disoriented and knocked over Jack's apple juice. The liquid arced through the air before landing on Victoria's $800 Italian leather pumps. Victoria stared at her ruined shoes, her face a mask of controlled fury. "Are you serious? Do you have any idea what these cost?" Then the plane lurched violently. Not gentle turbulence, but a sudden drop that sent unsecured items flying. The lights flickered. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing severe technical difficulties." Then, with an urgency that sent chills through the cabin, "This is Captain Reynolds. If there is anyone on board with military flight experience, particularly fighter pilots, please identify yourself immediately." Jack transferred Lily to the elderly woman and stood. "I'm former Lieutenant Commander Jack Morgan, United States Navy. 8 years flying F-18 Super Hornets. 2 combat tours. I can help." Every head turned to stare at the man in the worn gray jacket. Victoria's mouth fell open. As Jack made his way to the cockpit, memories flooded back. He remembered his last flight, 3 days before Emily went into labor. The doctor said the embolism was rare, unpreventable. He'd held Lily as Emily slipped away, her last words a whispered "take care of her." He'd walked away from his wings the next week, traded his fighter jet for a delivery truck, his purpose singular: be the father Lily needed. The cockpit revealed controlled chaos. Captain Reynolds was wrestling with controls. The co-pilot was incapacitated from food poisoning. Jack slid into the seat, his hands moving across the controls with practiced efficiency. The uncertain father became the confident pilot. Victoria sat frozen, her mind struggling to process what she'd witnessed. The man she dismissed as a failure was now literally holding their lives in his hands. The landing was rough but safe. The cabin erupted in spontaneous applause. Jack emerged from the cockpit. His first concern, Lily. She flew into his arms. Victoria stood as he passed, words dying on her lips. Jack paused. Your shoes. I'll pay for them. It might take me a few months, but I'll make it right. The offer broke something in Victoria. A week later, Victoria found Jack through social media. Just pictures of Lily at the park at preschool graduation. She messaged asking to meet. They met at a small coffee shop. I was horrible to you, she said. Not just rude, cruel, and you still saved my life. Jack shrugged. You were having a bad day. Victoria told him about her company, about the autonomous flight systems they were developing, about how she'd rejected his resume 6 months earlier because his recent experience was just delivery driver. I'm offering you a job not out of guilt, but because you're exactly the kind of expertise we need. Jack smiled. I appreciate the offer, but I can't. Lily's in a good preschool. Stability is what she needs. Their coffee grew cold as they talked. She told him about sleeping in the public library because it was warm, about deciding at age 10 that she would never be powerless again. He told her about his last mission, how he'd known his fighting days were over. Do you miss it? Victoria asked. I missed the simplicity of it, Jack said. Down here, I'm never sure if I'm doing the right thing. 2 months later, Jack joined Victoria's company part-time, working from home 3 days a week. Victoria pushed through on-site childcare despite board resistance. In his first month, he identified 3 critical vulnerabilities. Victoria found herself looking forward to the days Jack was in the office. One evening, Jack's phone showed pure panic. Lily's school just called. She's running a fever and I'm 40 minutes away. Victoria grabbed her keys. I'll drive. Lily threw up on Victoria's $300 blouse. Victoria didn't care. Sitting in Jack's apartment wearing his old Navy t-shirt, watching him coax medicine into Lily with infinite patience, she felt more at peace than she had in years. A month later, Victoria showed up with a picnic basket. We're going to the park. She pushed Lily on the swing, built a sandcastle. You're different, Jack told her. Victoria considered this. I spent so long proving I was strong enough to not need anyone that I forgot humans are meant to need each other. 3 weeks later at a company gala, Jack asked Lily to dance. He held his daughter with such tenderness, making her giggle. Your date seems nice, a board member commented. Victoria didn't correct him. He's extraordinary. The conversation that changed everything happened 3 weeks later. Do you ever think about what Emily would say about us? Victoria asked. Jack was quiet. I've been telling her about you. That you make Lily laugh. That you're nothing like what I expected to need, but exactly what I didn't know I was looking for. I'm terrified. I don't know how to do this without feeling like I'm betraying her memory. Victoria reached for his hand. I'm terrified too. But I want to try if you'll let me. We take it slow. Lily comes first always. 6 months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Victoria stood in Jack's kitchen making pancakes. Victoria, Lily's voice pulled her from her thoughts. Are you going to be my mommy? Victoria knelt beside Lily's chair. I'd like to be part of your family if you'll have me. But you already have a mommy who loved you very much. I'd just be Victoria who loves you and Daddy. Is that okay? Lily considered this gravely. Okay, but you have to learn to make better pancakes. 2 months later, Jack proposed in the park. Lily held the ring box with barely contained excitement. The wedding was small, held in their backyard. In her vows, Victoria talked about learning that strength wasn't about not needing anyone, but about being brave enough to admit when you did. Jack talked about second chances, about how love wasn't finite, but something that grew the more you shared it. 5 years later, Victoria stood before another board meeting as CEO of a company valued at $10 billion. But the metrics she was most proud of weren't on the profit statements. They were in the parental leave policies, the on-site childcare, the scholarship fund she'd established for single parents pursuing aviation careers named after Emily Morgan. She thought about that flight 5 years ago, about the woman she'd been, successful but hollow. As she walked toward her family, she thought about the captain's words that had changed everything. "We need a fighter pilot on board." What they'd really needed, what she'd really needed was someone to show her that true courage wasn't about flying alone above the clouds. It was about choosing to land, to trust, to build something worth protecting on solid ground. And as Lily ran into her arms, as Jack's hand found hers with the easy familiarity of years together, Victoria knew she hadn't just been saved that day. She'd been given a second chance at the life she never knew she wanted.